Welcome to the Wisdom of Show. I'm your host, Simon Bowen, and every week I'm speaking to the world's greatest leaders, thinkers, and entrepreneurs about complex issues and impactful leadership. Join us in the Renaissance of Wisdom. Well, welcome to another episode of the Wisdom of. This is a show where we unpack the wisdom of people that have been successful in various fields of performance. And wisdom is not age specific. Wisdom is perspective, it's experience, it's the clarity of thinking and decision making. It's tapping into insights and information that can guide you. And I'm particularly focused on wisdom because of the world we're living in right now. We really are living in uncertain times. We live in a world of short-term gratification, tips, tricks, and hacks. You know, what tools can you use? Social, economic, geopolitical instability. And yet in the midst of all of that, there are people that are still wildly successful, and they're successful because of who they are, the decisions they've made, and the endeavor to control what you can control and almost not worry about the rest. I have two great young Australian entrepreneurial leaders on the Wisdom of with me in this episode, and they are the founders of XRecruiter. The recruiting industry is pretty tough, and there's the vast majority of recruiters around the world are working in micro or at best small to medium-sized recruitment industries. It's a pretty tough industry to make your way in. And Blake Thompson, the CEO of XRecruiter, and Declan Kluver, the chief business officer. I need to dig into that title in a little while.
I'll do it with you.
Are met through the recruitment industry. I'm going to get them to tell their story in a minute because they were competitors. They knew each other when they were younger. But I want to dig into how competitors become partners. And they've really created a platform for recruiters worldwide that substantially transforms recruiters' businesses. Blake's going to be moving to Austin in 2026 to continue to expand the global operations, and particularly through North America. But just let me read some numbers in terms of the growth of the company. And so the company emerged in COVID, basically, which is probably not the best time to think about launching something. But in 2023, the financial year 2023, XRecruiter had $975,000 in combined revenue with partner agencies. In 2024, so that's just a year, that jumped to 16 million, which is a 1,540% increase. And for the 2025 year, the projected or forecast combined revenue is 55 million, with a reasonable expectation that as the movement to North America and the expansion of the business could easily take it to 100 million the year after that. It's phenomenal growth by any measure. And so I really want to dig in with Blake and Declan and understand how people so young have been so successful so early, and what is the future looking like for them, and understand a bit more about the recruiting industry. So Blake and Declan, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for giving us this time, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Thanks for having us, Simon.
I'd love you to just fill us in on this idea. First of all, actually position the idea of XRecruiter for us and why it's, because it doesn't really exist. One of the reasons, Blake, you're going to be going to Austin to relocate, to open up the market even further there was not really anything like this in Australia. There's not really something like this in the US. What is the transformative nature of XRecruiter for the industry that you've built, that you've created?
Yeah, sure. So I guess if we take a step back to before XRecruiter was invented, so to speak, it was really a conversation between myself and Declan. We were running our own different agencies. We knew each other from school, so we had a little bit of rapport there, and we used to be good friends, and then we drifted apart when we started competing recruitment agencies. And the industry typically is a very skeptical and fierce industry where you never talk to your competitor. And so when COVID happened, I got a call from Declan, and Declan goes, what's just happened to your business? Because mine's almost gone to zero. And I said, mine's almost gone to zero too. So I'm glad we're experiencing the same thing. And then we started strategizing on how we're going to make it through the tough period of COVID.
Yes.
I had a bunch of salaries, lots of resources I'm paying for, typical business operating expenses. And the first initial realization or kind of moment where XRecruiter started taking shape was Declan was asking me about how much I pay for this, how much I pay for that, how much are you paying on your lease, what's the per square meter, so like what accountants are you using, how do you think I can try and save money on this supplier or that supplier, and then when we started sharing our knowledge around how we deal with suppliers, how we attract staff to our business, how we follow up debt and try and get invoices paid. I'll digress really quickly on a short story. I'm someone that doesn't put too much energy into delinquent debts. So I'll send it straight to the lawyer for them to follow it up because I just want to keep focused on sales. And during a time when you've got no money coming in the door, you need to be really cost conscious. And so I had about $250,000 in invoices outstanding. A lot of clients weren't paying. They were also scared and wanting to hold on cash during the COVID period. And I was talking to Declan about this, and I said, "Oh, I'm just going to try and send it to the lawyer and see what we can get. How do you handle your debt recovery process?" And Declan turns around and goes, "I just tell him. I just go, mate, are you a man of your word?" And I went, "You're kidding. You don't say that." And he goes, "Mate, I say, are you a man of your word? Because you gave me your word that if I delivered that you'd pay me. So you need to pay me." And I thought, this is going to be interesting. And so I took that approach with my next overdue invoice that was maybe 31 days overdue. And rather than just sending it straight off to debt collection, I called him out and said, "Mate, are you a man of your word?" And he got offended, and then he paid the invoice 24 hours later. And I thought, geez, we're both experiencing recruitment, business, and our lives being similar ages on the same timeline. But for some reason, we're 100 meters apart, not sharing the knowledge and the wisdom that we're both collecting as we build our businesses.
Mm.
So that was probably the first realization that, geez, we really need to start coming together more often because it's going to make us better business owners. It's going to save us money, and we're going to do better and be more fulfilled and have someone to talk to because business can be lonely, right?
Very, very lonely.
So that was like the first initial kind of moments of XRecruiter when we thought, okay, we need to do something community based where lots of recruiters come together, share resources, share ideas, and all win together. Then we went down the path of, okay, well, who were we when we started business? Because, geez, we'd love it if someone helped us with what we know now on how to start. Because again, Declan and I, we just winged it like most new business owners do. They just, they put in their best guess. Maybe they take a couple of little processes from their previous employer that they understand that may or may not work and tweak it a little bit. But really, most business owners are in the trenches, kind of, lack of a better term here, like making it up as they go, so to
Yeah.
speak. We all are in life, really. We try and do our best efforts. But so Declan and I, we sat down and basically wrote a wish list on everything we wish we had and someone helped us with when starting our recruitment agency, and then added to that around what would be the best way to get everything off our plate when we ran our recruitment agency that would make us more successful today. And essentially it started from there.
Yeah, interesting. And I've just actually got to pick up a quick footnote on something you said there as well. As it's fascinating that Declan said, I just say to people, look, are you a person of your word, right? There's a great line that you can put in an email when you're asking people to honor their commitments. And that is, the line that says, all any of us have is our honor, is our integrity and our reputation. And the question is, are you going to stay in honor of yours? Calling people out to values is a powerful tool, provided you've acted with values the whole time, right? You can't call them out if you haven't. And it's just interesting. What I'm hearing is a story about the best thinking of two people coming together. You're going through a whole process, to get people to pay, and Declan's just jumping straight to the let's just ask them. Declan, your experience of coming together with a competitor, because sometimes people aren't in competition with who they think they are in the marketplace. We have this scarcity mentality very often. And what, in your experiences of coming together with a perceived competitor who you'd been friends with, was there anything you had to actually work through in your own mind before you were willing to go, you know what, I'm going to commit to this, let's do this thing?
It was probably the advice from people around me that kept me from not reaching out to Blake sooner.
Yeah, right.
So just focus on your own thing. He's doing his thing. Don't worry about anyone else. You just got your little business to focus on. And it kept me quite small. I think I got up to, head count's a vanity metric, but I think I got up to 3 staff. And it's a stressful time. I've never led a football team. I've never been a captain of any sporting team, never managed staff before starting blended employment. So to see Blake had always had, what I saw as like a poised, sensible outlook on things. And I guess I'm a bit more, looser in that sense. Like I'll call someone out and be like, "Oi, give us your word, otherwise you're not paying." I just couldn't even I wouldn't even find a lawyer because I'd be like, "Oh, that's too hard for me to then sit down with a lawyer and go through that process." I didn't even have a lawyer as a contact. So with men it works, but you can't really say that to females, I've learned. But yeah, I think it was just like through COVID, because you just literally your back's up against the wall and you go, "I got to make this work." And I've spoken to all these other business people and small business owners. I used to run a small business networking event called Blending Business for 12 months. And it wasn't actually until I got the right advice from Blake where I was like, I don't care what he's doing or where he's going. Like, at least I'm just getting the right information and I'm not sitting here spinning gravel like I felt like some parts of me I did for like 2 years.
Yeah.
So we used to work in the same office together when we were in recruitment. So you don't compete with your colleagues. Why is you're running a desk, then you run a business, you're still in the same market. So
Yeah.
you sort of, I didn't really have that thought process. I was just like, how can I get better? And I can only get so far on my own.
Well, I think it's interesting that you said that the advice you were getting was, do your own thing, keep your own small little business, your own, and the operating word there is small, right? The world's largest companies didn't get large because they isolated themselves. And, if you can bring together complementary skill sets and aptitudes, particularly, that attitude of, look, mate, are you a person of, of honor? You're going to keep your word, is an aptitude rather than a skill. But you said Blake has poise and is calm and level. That's an aptitude, not a skill. And maybe the best partnerships are formed with people that come together with different but complementary aptitudes rather than different but complementary skills, because you can buy the skills, right? But you can't buy the aptitude.
True.
You can't buy calm and poise. You can't buy let's just get to it. Are you call it out kind of thing. It's interesting. So but XRecruiter's obviously done well because you've redefined something about the recruiting industry. And what is it that you think it emerged out of COVID, backs against the wall. There's so many success stories that come out of hardship, but you've obviously found something that recruiters are relating to that are causing them to want to partner with you and build their business through you. What is that? What do you think that transformative opportunity was that you spotted, and how is that how are you communicating that to the marketplace?
So I guess just to summarize your question to make sure I answer it directly is what about the XRecruiter business model is so enticing to recruiters ultimately? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Sure.
Much better stated than I'd put it. So let's go with that, shall we?
So I think a few things. The first thing is you need to understand what a recruiter is going through day to day. And a recruiter, when they're a PAYG employee, they are going through the peaks and troughs of sales. Recruiters are salespeople. They're responsible for chasing their own business, chasing their candidates, making the placements. And to be open, they're probably doing 70 to 80% of the work of the revenue generation part. They're just not really sending the invoice and doing a small amount of operational tasks on the back end. And so recruitment is a low barrier to entry industry. You don't need a certificate, a skill set, an education. So many recruiters get into it with pure drive and hunger. However, what they lack is the business operational perspective to be able to go, how can I turn my skills that I've learned in this position into a business, earn more money, get more time back with my family, start to build a future that I'm really proud of. And so I'm really lucky that I have a family that are small business owners as well. And it wasn't until, my mother said to me, why don't you just do it for yourself? And I thought, could I do that? She said, yeah, of course you can. And I went, oh, that was the first time I ever thought of starting a business. It never crossed my mind ever. And so I think what really helps with XRecruiter, because we're the recruiters that we're ultimately relating to and selling to, we've been in their exact position. And many of them don't understand or know the value or potential value of their skill set if in the right vehicle with the right support around them. So as we continue to market ourselves and talk to recruiters and explain to them that the gap from where they are today to where they want to be is actually really small, and we're here to hold their hand through the whole process, and they get quite excited about the idea that they can reduce risk. The fear of going alone is no longer there. They can lean into people who have walked the path that they've walked before. And I like to use the term collective wisdom quite a lot in XRecruiter, because we're all of us have our own unique value, but as a collective wisdom, like, we're all able to achieve so much more stuff, both personally and professionally, when we're all working together. So I think a lot of recruiters are seeing that and going, wow, this is actually, like, this is an opportunity for me. Declan's walked the same path I have. Blake has as well. Maybe this is my chance, and I want these two people to help guide me do that.
Yeah, it's interesting. But that's also almost a blueprint for any industry, in terms of understand it intimately. It's a bit bold to go into an industry you've never actually spent any time in and suggest you're going to change the world for them. But I find myself saying to people over and over again, all of us are selling the same two things. People fundamentally want to be made safe. They don't want to behave safely. They want to drive too fast or, drink too much or whatever, but they want to be made safe. And the collective actually makes people safe. The community of, we're all recruiters, but we're all a part of XRecruiter, but we have our own independent businesses, and collective wisdom makes us safe. The second thing we're selling is everybody wants to win. No recruiter ever said, all I want is an average agency. They all want to have a great agency. And if you can help people win and make them safe, you're a long way down the path, if you like. Declan, I'd be interested in, so we heard the story of the genesis of the business. It was 2020. It was a tough period of time worldwide. There would have been some challenges you guys had to overcome. Some of them might have been founder dynamics. When there's one founder in a business, it's actually pretty easy for that founder. They just make their decisions and do it. When there's two founders, you've got to talk about stuff. I'd love to dig into some of the founder dynamics that others might learn from the two of you coming through together. And what were the big challenges you had to overcome to get this to the point where it was scaling like it is now?
Yeah, definitely. It's a journey, and I think Blake summed it up. There's two things that Blake put really nicely one day at different times. And he said, a business relationship, although it's, 50-50 and on paper it's 50-50, but you're never actually 50-50. So sometimes it'd be 70-30, sometimes 60-40, 80-20, because we're all in different seasons of life. We've all got different things going on. And being able to understand that, like, sometimes one of us are going to be pedal to the metal full on, and then sometimes the other is going to be on holidays. and appreciating that.
Yeah.
But working out positions is obviously, that was a journey. Like, that's why this CBO title is new, but we obviously start businesses, so we can chat about that. But yeah, understanding each other's personality as well. Like, we're complete opposites. In a lot of ways, I thought we were very similar when we first started working together. But the further we go down, and there's been a heavy amount of personal development investment made, being able to communicate, and just understand each other intimately to ensure we get the best out of each other. Because we both have one big duty to each other, and that's just to be the best business partner. We're fortunate enough, I think we're best friends as well, but to be the best business partner to each other. And some days we're not, some days we are, but in every ethos, we're always trying. Like, everything comes from a good place, and we always know when one's a little bit off or one's completely dialed in. It just ebbs and flows together. So yeah, they're probably and understanding personalities is something I've learned to get better at, and not being the bull in the china shop. And then Blake's very analytical. The complete opposite to that. So, like, I'd rather be at a launch party, and sometimes Blake would have more fun reading a P&L, to put it simply. So it just depends what we both want, but understanding that has really been able to help us get the best out of each other and find our own places within the business. Because, like you said, when we first started, like, we both run our own recruitment agencies. We didn't know that, and the other one thing Blake said was 1 + 1 = 3. When you have a business partner, you're working your ass off. Like, we didn't make a profit for 12 months, didn't take wages for 18 months. So, like, we're pouring everything into this business. We're answering calls from Blended and Vendito. Blake's running up to our office to then onboard a new partner. It was like that for 12, 18 months. So yeah, but yeah, once you get into flow, and I always looked at business leaders, when they say you get the right people around you, that's what builds it. And yeah, we're fortunate enough to have an incredible team across all areas.
Yeah, you said something interesting, which actually I think is a conversation not enough business partners actually have, and that is, we have one objective, one obligation, and that is to be the best business partner. And there's a lot of business partnerships where that conversation was never had up front, and the baseline was never set. I'll just stick with you for a second, Declan. I interviewed Kent, who's one of the co-founders of Neuro, and he and his partner Neuro's now, a substantial global company, in terms of chewable supplements and things that can really kind of create focus and help with relaxation and sleep. Yeah. So quite a revolutionary product. And I asked Kent how did they have a mechanism for resolving differences and even conflict between the two of them as founders, right? So values are always found out in difficulty, when the pressure's on. Do the two of you have any deliberate strategies you've actually discussed in advance? When we don't agree on something, this is the pathway, this is what we do. Or when we're actually in conflict over something, because we've got this business between us now, there's people, there's wages, there's commitments. This is what we do. The conflict isn't just about us. The disagreement isn't just about us anymore. Is there anything you've actually consciously established as business partners to deal with that?
Yeah, probably the best rule we've ever put in is the 24-hour rule. So if we're ever unsure, like, I can't think of a time where we've actually been in a stoush where we haven't resolved a conversation before we've gone to bed. But if there's ever a critical decision we need to make, we always have a 24-hour rule where we just sleep on it and then come back tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, pause is one of the superpowers of the human condition, but we're forgetting to use it. So between stimulus and response, humans have pause. The animal kingdom doesn't. But we don't use pause often enough. We don't. Free will lives in that space between stimulus and response, according to Stephen Covey. But if we don't exercise the pause, 24-hour rule is a pause, right? It's incredible how less important things seem to be in the morning than they were before. What can we jump into technology a little bit? So you've created a platform, a SaaS platform. It's a proprietary platform that you're using. AI is the talk of the world right now. Everyone's almost high and intoxicated on AI. There was obviously a need for the SaaS platform that you saw, but I'd love you to walk me through how technology is really impacting the recruiting industry, and where do you think it's heading in terms of, say, AI? And what was the real paradigm shift that you created with the platform that you built for your recruiters? Maybe I'll throw back to Blake on that. Then we can just take turns. You see, we can just go Blake and Declan, Blake and Declan.
Love that. It gives us a break, Simon, and then we
Yes,
can
it
always
does.
be our best selves. To answer that, I guess firstly, there's a few in there. How is AI going to
Yes.
affect recruitment in the future? I think AI is going to supercharge us. I think it's going to take away a lot of the unflattering tasks and duties of what a recruiter does. A recruiter's genius is around influencing. That's all they do. They are master influencers, and they get paid to influence one person to leave their business and join someone else's.
Right.
However, there's 20 steps that are required before they can get to them working in their genius and start influencing. And that's, you've got to find them, you've got to warm them up, you've got to engage them, you've got to try and get their number. Then you finally jump on the phone. Like, we're not talking just post a job ad and, you've got magic people that want to work for your business. A lot of the recruiter's value comes from creating the brief, identifying people, targeting them, influencing them. So when we start to have things like AI, and depends on how deep this whole AI rabbit hole goes, there's a lot of opportunity for automation, outreach, matching skills and criteria, providing questionnaires, getting back to people if they have applied or if they are interested in a role. There's also, like, Declan shared something the other week around like an AI phone prospecting outbound phone dialer, where, let's say, in the blue collar industry, for example, you might have 400 job applicants for a forklift driver. And for a recruiter to sit there and call 400 people, they just won't do it. So, I mean, here's some behind the scenes of a recruiter. They will just keep dialing until they find 4 great people, and then the rest of them will probably just get forgotten about because they've already hit the criteria to go, these 4 people hit the brief. So the other 300 people might not even get called. And so instead, if you can have an AI prospecting, phone dialing voice that calls everyone, asks them how their day is, finds out, do they have a forklift ticket? Where do you live? What are your salary expectations? And actually go through this whole process. It'd make the experience for candidates a lot more pleasant, and it'd probably unlock a lot more value for a recruiter to then jump back on the phone, influence, and then be able to get people across. So from an AI perspective, I think that's going to be interesting to watch unfold. So hopefully none of us are talking to an AI recruitment bot in the near future. If we are, then we've all got bigger problems, I guess. So there's that part of the AI kind of future journey.
Yeah.
And then with our SaaS platform, I think what the power of our platform is it ties all of the services and products and resources that a recruiter needs to operate their business into one spot. So generally, we all have fragmented bits of data, logins, softwares, whatever it might be, and it's, is it in my Google Drive? Oh, is it on my desktop? Oh, is it, in this Google account, or is it in this Microsoft account? And everything's just too scattered, and it's not good for productivity. So the benefit of the XRecruiter platform is everything comes into the one space. Plus, you obviously get a lot of hand holding through the process of growing and running your agency on top of that to enable that technology to do what it needs to do.
Yeah, so interesting. Some hand holding. I know that you do some, coaching and development work. We need to get back to the chief business officer title in a minute, because that sounds like it's aimed at helping people increase business, and whether it's XRecruiter increasing business. But recruiting seems to be an industry. I have a former life as an executive in a large Australian company, and then a consultancy for kind of well over 25 years. And recruiting companies are spoken about with a real love-hate relationship by large companies. We need a recruiter because we want to find the best person, but do we have to spend that much money to actually get a great person and everything else? So there's value that needs to be sold, right? And the value is extraordinary because we know the cost of a poor fit. We know that success is all about recruitment and selection and onboarding, rather than performance management. It's disproportionately attached to get the right people to start with. But, do you help your recruiter partners to position themselves more effectively in the marketplace? And what are some of the things you've identified for yourselves when you're selling something to the marketplace that the market might not immediately really understand the true value of what you do? They think it's a process. Put some ads up, put something on Seek, get a list of people, check their CVs, do some reference checking, give us a compiled list, shortlist them, and then help us interview. Like, it seems pretty process oriented as opposed to what's the real magic. Is there anything that you do that helps people really position the ambiguity of the value in a more powerful way?
Yeah, for sure. So we've got Matt Cossins. He's our Chief Growth Officer. So
Yeah.
he's the head of learning and development, he'd be Australia's #1 recruitment coach. He's a wizard. He's been in the industry for 20 years. But prior to joining us, he was the CEO of a 45-person recruitment agency, billed over $1 million. So, if you bill over $1 million, that's sort of the benchmark of a high-end recruiter. He's
Right.
done that. He's done over 2 million. So he's done everything himself. He's then led teams and been all the way through. So to unpack everything he does on one interview would be pretty hard. But I think, and I'll get Blake to jump in and out if I miss anything. But one of the biggest things is where most people miss is that they focus exactly what you were talking about, the process. Sometimes they'll mention the company, but the biggest leverage that we've had, and the reason why, when we've got a client who's 21, we've got a client who's 60, and everyone in between. And the reason why their clients love working for them and with them is because of who they are as a person. Like, everyone talks about personal branding, and it's not just about, sharing what you do on the weekends with your families and friends, but it's about, being your most authentic self, and people buying off you first. They want to work with the consultant because they love that consultant. It's not because of the brand behind them. And then when people are working for themselves, like, the world gets out of your way. Like, if you see a young Australian or any Australian having a crack in their first business, like the office I'm in right now I'm over in Perth with LH Partners, and they're a drilling recruitment agency. They're 8 weeks in, and you'd fall off your seat if you knew what they've built and built within 8 weeks. But they just have so much buy-in. Like, their office they're in, they got an awesome deal because the landlord wanted to help out 2 young guys in business. Their clients are referring them people, candidates are bringing them candidates because they just know the quality of service, and they've worked in the industry as well in drilling, and then they recruit in drilling. They've been doing it for 7 years, and so it's just a cut through an authority they'll be able to create for themselves. So I think that's the first thing, is leading in with selling yourself. People join XRecruiter because it's Blake,
Yes.
it's Declan, it's Matt. It's not just because it's XRecruiter, and then selling your company and your product thereafter. Also, actually understanding that you're not just a consultant anymore, you're a director, and then being able to be like actually an advisor to your clients, and talking about metrics that matter, outcomes that matter. Matt teaches heavily on understanding the risks that, say, a CEO has to face in his business. Risk about bringing on a new supplier. What's the return on investment that's needed by bringing on a key hire? How do you onboard them effectively? How do you control the recruitment process so things don't fall through the gaps? How do you work with the best candidates in the market? What's your candidate attraction process? Even it sounds cliche, but like the 80-20 rule, splitting, what are the best clients to work for in the market, and how do you work with literally the best? I know there's a lot of slogans out there that said everyone's changing the recruitment industry and everyone is working with the best candidates. But Matt's really broken that down on how our partners can do that, which is definitely special. So it's a combination of business acumen and personal branding, and following a sales process that works really well, and understanding personalities and all that.
Yeah, look, there's some big key takeaways there. There are 5 key buying decisions that any customer is actually going through at a subconscious level. And you laid out the first 2 of them, and they are in order. The first one is, do I like, trust, respect, and believe this person? the face of the company, the actual human, right? If I don't, this is not going any further. If I do I like, trust, and respect and believe the company that sits behind them, the team, the technology, the systems and processes? The third, fourth, and fifth are, do I like, trust, respect, and believe in the solution? Do I think it will work? Do I think this is great value? And then it's just about time. Is this the right time for me to be doing this thing? And so the first two are critical. And then I'm pleased to hear you say, Declan, have a great sales process, because my world is about marketing and selling. And more companies than we think do not have a clear, repeatable sales process that everybody knows how to use, right? That makes a huge difference. Just have a clear, repeatable sales process that everybody knows how to use and everybody knows how to put people into, even if they're not the salesperson. I'm happy to take, I'd love to talk about scale and exponential growth, because by any measure, your company journey, we'd have to say, is exponential over a short period of time. I'd really love the two of you to share insights, observations, strategies that worked for you. I don't think you start out during, when COVID puts your backs to the wall, do kind of over 900,000 in 1 year and then jump to, I think, 16 million it was, and then to, heading towards 55 million. That doesn't happen accidentally. What are the lessons? What were the deliberate decisions you made along the way? What were the insights that you gained from mistakes and wins along the way? I might go to Blake first, and then Declan, I'll ask you for your observations about scale and exponential growth, because I think everybody would love that.
For sure. It's an interesting question, and I know you've made the comment around it. It must have been deliberate a few times, and it's becoming more deliberate. However, when we first started, being naive at the time, 2.5 years ago, the goal was just to get 10 partners. Like, if we can help 10 people start and run their recruitment agency, we'd be happy. And that was actually the big vision before we actually had any clients. It was, geez, if we can help 10 people, we could just go, that was a success. And so we helped our first 10 people, and we thought, geez, we're not making any money here. This costs a lot more to service these clients than we anticipated. And then that's when, like, the realization kicked in. I was still running my business. Declan's still running his business. We were trying to balance between the two around, what do we do with our recruitment agency? We both have staff, but at the same time, we're in XRecruiter telling everyone to start their own recruitment agency. There was like this really weird contradiction happening and juggling act between our business with our own consultants and XRecruiter and the model that we were kind of refining and defining at the time. So once we had 10, we were going backwards significantly per month, and we sat down together and thought, we're going to have to really kick our asses into gear here and go all in, or else this actually won't have the legs that it needs. So at that point, we thought, all right, we need to start full-time in the business. So we didn't start full-time in XRecruiter until January last year. So Declan and I have only worked full-time in our business for, I guess, 14 months.
Wow.
It was part-time prior to that. And it was massive days, working Saturdays, working Sundays, and we're grateful that we had a lot of people that we could rely on and a lot of people that trusted us to do the job. I think one thing that I'm really grateful for is we kind of have a really nice sprinkle of luck, hard work, and we've walked the walk. So like those three things all together around timing, we are the recruiters that we are helping, and a little bit of luck really helped us scale quite quickly, because as soon as you help one person, all their previous colleagues at their previous recruitment agency find out and they go, oh my God, Billy Bob just started his agency. Why can't I do it? And then you've got 10 other people that have been introduced to the XRecruiter model, and then they do it, and then their friends know about it. And it's this really crazy compounding effect. It's also actually quite challenging marketing to recruiters, because as a recruiter, if you engage with XRecruiter content, you are signaling to your employer that you might be looking at leaving.
Yeah,
And
right.
so one of our biggest challenges were how do we get our name out there and our voice out there without making a recruiter, and this is probably a little bit of perspective wisdom that we had at the time, which I'm happy that we had looking back, is how do we get in front of recruiters without signaling to their employer that they're engaging with us or they are learning about us. So we decided to create a podcast. So we created a podcast that's Confessions of a Recruiter, powered by XRecruiter, to create a degree of separation from the recruiters to XRecruiter. It's the #1 recruitment podcast in Australia. We've got over 100 episodes. We fly around Australia talking to recruiters and recording it and putting it out. So a lot of our business has come from recruiters that sit, they listen, they learn, they feel like they get to know us. Sometimes we'll get an inquiry and they'll talk about, what school we went to and that time that I went down to this. And you sit there racking your brain, like, how do you know all this stuff? And it's just because they listen to the podcast and they've got to know our journey and they feel like they already know us and they can trust us and kind of go through the process. So there's this like really nice compounding effect in recruitment because it's such a tight industry that as long as you keep helping people, then more people will find out. And as they grow their business, XRecruiter grows as well. So it's in our best interest to not only get a partner on board, but help them get staff, help them generate more income. So we might get one partner today, but they might have 10 staff in 12 months. And technically we've just grown a 10x account ourselves as well. So we get the growth of partners, but then we get the growth of our partners' growth as well, which is where that exponential kind of that skew comes from.
So you really doubled down on that first question again, which is, do I like, trust, respect, and believe these people, these two guys? And you did that one to many rather than one to one through a podcast platform. And I sometimes think people underestimate just how powerful a podcast actually is, and how clever to be having the conversation you want to have with the industry without really having the conversation you want to have with the industry, and have them all talk about the challenges and the problems and everything else. They're almost selling themselves. Declan, were there any particular aspects of the growth that you've had that you're pretty proud about, decisions you made, strategies you executed to create the growth you've had?
Yeah, I guess because we were hemorrhaging money when we started, so all we ever need, like our decisions were not
So we'll take a pause.
Like we just had to grow.
We'll just take a pause. I feel like that's I feel like that's a therapeutic laugh. Like
yeah.
It's just so funny how honest Declan is sometimes in the language that he uses. I mean, he's accurate. We were hemorrhaging money.
First 6 months have to, like, this is going way back to the beginning. Fortunate enough, you get past it, so it's funny to talk about it. But at the time, we didn't want to talk about it. You just had to run really fast. All that mattered was new signups, and then we were fortunate enough that our first 10 customers we did get on, they performed incredibly well. Like to Crystal, Jimmy, H People, Harwell, Lisa, Chris, Tech Talent, like. They just were like along for the journey as well. Like a brand new business is helping someone start a business. Like they had this level of belief in us. Probably, sometimes more than we believed in ourselves at times. And that's where that luck sprinkle that Blake's talking about. So yeah, it was just doubling down on sales. Like sales, the part that I always went wrong in my agency, and I talk about it a bit, is we always you have to get to a certain level of growth before worrying about optimizing costs is important. So anytime I would go through a growth in my agency blended, I get to an end of a quarter, be like, all right, I'm going to spend more money on something, or I'm going to actually try and save money on posting cheaper job ads or cutting a subscription or this type of stuff. It wasn't until a business coach, and now we have mentors in a lot of different areas now, because then we can just get the best advice. But at the time, you've just got to run really hard, really fast, outsource as much as you can so you can just be solely focused on sales. And then when we get to a certain size, then we can optimize costs. So that was probably one of the reflection points where I did wrong in blended, but we did it really right in XRecruiter. It didn't matter that it didn't matter about the lumpy cash flow from the beginning, because once we got those first 10, we could get the next 10. And then now it's exciting for the amount of partners we're onboarding now and the success of all the agencies. Like it's laid a true foundation for us to be an international business. But yeah, that's probably one of the biggest takeaways that we're glad we did, where we just focused on revenue as opposed to trying to optimize costs.
Well, the first 10 tell you that there's a business there. Therefore, growing it is now your choice, as opposed to is there even a business there? There is, because you've got 10. And I'm always saying to people, focusing on the back end and delivery is overcapitalization if you haven't first scaled your selling. The key to scaling a business is scale the sales. It really is that simple. You can pay to fix every other problem if you're scaling your sales, but cost reduction is a zero-sum game. Eventually, there's no money being spent, but you're still not driving sales. And not everybody loves the idea of having to drive sales, particularly people who got into something because they had a skill set. They wanted to be, say, a consultant or recruiter or whatever, and then found out really they've got to sell, like crazy. But that business development, scale your selling. And so, as you look forward, so we've taken our business from Australia. About 80% of our clients are in North America. We're operating in about 30 different countries. We've got people all around the world using our system. And, there were conscious and deliberate decisions that I went through, and as a business we went through, to decide to go, first of all, to the US, because there's a cost attached. For a start, you're going to get on planes and spend a lot of time there. Blake's going to live there. There are real consequences of that decision. And if we look forward for XRecruiter, say 2030, and where you want to be in another 10 years from now, for example, 2035, what were the decisions that drove that international growth? Was it part of the scale you've already been enjoying here? You realized there was so much bigger opportunity there, or what were the international growth decisions that you worked through?
Yeah, I think just generally, Declan and I are ambitious guys. So the idea of going international, I mean, this is an elementary way of thinking about it, but sounded exciting at the time.
Yeah.
So there's that. And we had a lot of really successful international recruitment entrepreneurs come and talk to us about XRecruiter, very interested in the model and wanting to understand how they could possibly participate and take part, etc. And one of the gentlemen that we spoke to, who is a really good guy, he built his agency from 0 to 250 headcount, I think a $200 million valuation inside like 6 years, going from the UK to the US. And he tried to start an Australian office 3 times. And I said, why have you tried to start an Australian office 3 times? And he said, mate, this is the reality with Aussies, mate. They're lazy. They want to go surfing. They want to work from home. They want to, go pick up their kids from school. They want to go walk their dog. UK and the US, they're just fierce. They want to win. They're big personalities. They're driven. They're hungry. And Aussies are generally, if you compare the UK recruiters and the American recruiters to the Australian recruiters, it's chalk and cheese. And I just could not find the types of recruiters that wanted to work hard enough to be able to create a successful recruitment agency in Australia. And I had that conversation 3 times with 3 different people that have tried to start agencies in Australia. So then we looked into the differences and we thought, okay, well, if we can encourage this amount of Aussies to be able to start their recruitment agency, I wonder what that would look like in the UK or the US. And we got some industry insights. And in America, there is 11 times more the amount of recruiters than Australia. So that's obviously an 11x pool that we can influence. But the revenue generated per recruiter in the US is also 4 times greater than Australia. So in Australia, the average revenue is 195,000 or something like this. In America, it's about 900,000. So they generate 4 times more the amount of fees. They're in US dollars, so there's a 40% uplift in the currency, and there's 11 times more than them. So it's like this really crazy trifecta of we only need to go to Texas and it's 3 times bigger than Australia and we don't have to leave the state. So imagine the opportunity that could be in the US. So we decided Texas because second largest GDP in America. You can get to the east and west coast nice and easily. Maybe there's some horses we can ride around on with my daughter and shoot a few guns. My partner wouldn't be impressed with that statement, but if he wants to stay away from the guns. But America is they talk about the land of opportunity, and when you look at the data in comparison to Australia, it's like millions of percentile larger than what we've got in Australia. So we can only imagine if we just duplicated what we've already done, what that could look like in the US.
Well, you've really highlighted a key model or principle, if you like, that I think about a lot when it comes to business. And in very simplistic terms, you can make an argument that business is 50% maths and 50% psychology. You've just walked through the math, right? And the math also says if you can start a business successfully in a tough market, you have enormous opportunity, when the market becomes strong, or if you move it to a stronger market. But it's 50% math. How many people are there to buy from us? What's their capacity to pay us? What's our ability to charge a fee that we want to charge? The mathematics of it, right? And if the math doesn't make sense, nothing else will, actually. Nothing else you try will make sense. But the 50% that is psychology is, are we solving a big problem that people don't want to solve for themselves? Is the psychology piece. Don't want to or can't, but don't want to is better. They don't want to solve it for themselves. They want somebody else to solve it for them. And can we communicate that in a way that they're going to buy into it? When you're looking at a new market, do the maths and psychology actually match up to the end of the market? And of course they do, because you're solving a big problem that the recruiters don't really want to solve themselves and possibly can't. Seems to be a global problem. And the maths are fantastic. When you look at Texas, like 3 times, as you say, the Australian population, that's wild. It's a crazy thing to think about. So, Australia is proud of you. What you've already done is I'm looking at my research from when the business started, but I wasn't aware you'd only actually worked full time in the business for 12 months. So by any measure, that kind of growth is substantial. I'm sure it's going to be a wild success. I'd love to finish off with just some quick questions that are a bit about you, finding out a bit about, your favorite time in history or whatever. I'll just call out one of your names. I'll give you a question, throw me a quick response, and we'll see how we go. So Declan, I might start with you. I don't think anyone wakes up when they're in primary school or high school and goes, yeah, I think I want to be a recruiter. So, you talked about this a little bit before, but what did you actually want to be when you were a child?
Yeah, even up until my recruitment interview, I wanted to be a clearance diver in the Navy. That's what I told so I told the interviewer at the time. Yeah, to be a clearance diver and be an SAS soldier and be an action figure. Yeah.
Right. And so you became a recruiter.
So I became a recruiter, yeah.
Declan, if you could spend a day in the mind of anybody in human history or in the current period of time, but a day in their mind, so you really get an insight into what they think about, how they think about it, who would that be and why would you want to pick that person?
Marcus Aurelius would be probably my go-to one. Just how to remain calm and be in what's it called? Yeah, just how to remain calm in all situations.
Right. And Blake, if you could go to any period in history, any period, and you get to be a fly on the wall. You don't get to change it, but you get to be a fly on the wall and really see what it was like. Where would you go to? What period in history?
That's interesting. I'm just thinking. Sorry, Simon.
That's okay.
Oh, look, I've always been interested in the like medieval times, walking around with heavy armor on and cooking over a fire and trudging to the next place and getting your orders from the king to go fight these guys. Like I've always wondered how that dynamic works. Finding a wife somehow that's running around in the castle walls and, just figuring out how to make a little house together and raising a family and trying to survive life. I think probably the most interested I am in history is probably the whole, the most engaged I've been, sorry, is probably when the US got founded. What's in 1776 or something when, they're sailing boats over
Yeah.
and they're finding this new land. I think that would just be discovering America, I think would just be a fascinating thing.
And let's finish, Blake, on you're heading towards moving to Austin in about a year from now. Um, Life will be different. Life already is different for the two of you. So, Blake, what song best describes your life right now and why?
I'm not a musical guy, Simon. This is going to be a tough one.
Yeah,
Do you have any plan B questions?
I do. I got a plan B question. Could you share a personal philosophy or saying that guides your decision making, your actions, how you show up?
I generally live by doing the right thing by the other person first. A really quick story is when I first started my business, I had 6 or 7 staff working for me, and 3 of them weren't working out. And I was constantly trying to get them better, better, better. And my mum sat down with me one day and said, Blake, you have got a moral responsibility to do what's in the best interest of your staff. They're failing, they're miserable, they're not enjoying life. You need to man up and let them go because they don't have the courage to resign. So do what's in the best interest for them and man up and do what you need to do. And that was probably a moment where I thought, wow, you've got to make tough decisions for their best interest and not be a coward or scared to
Yeah.
make those tough decisions.
Right, great. Thank you. Well, thank you both very much. I will watch XRecruiter with absolute interest. There's no doubt in my mind that the company's going to grow and grow exponentially. I think there's a lot of things for people to take out of the episode that, even to the basic level of we're just excited and we kind of just had a go. We might not have known everything we needed to know at the start. And if you did, you might not have started knowing what that was going to be like. But let's just have a go at this thing and see what we can make happen. Let's make a contribution. Let's create something that serves recruiters in a way that they're not being served at the moment. Change the industry for them. Find a stealth way of getting to them, which by default adds value to them in any way. And then really double down on sales, drive the revenue line, be people that people want to like, trust, respect, and believe, put a company behind it, make full use of technology and AI, and pursue expansion. If a business is not growing, it's dying. And we're thrilled to see an Australian company doing what you're doing, and we look forward to seeing what you do on the international stage. So thank you very much for the time today.
Appreciate it. Thanks,
Simon. Thanks for having us.
Giving us a platform, and we're just 2 young Australians having a crack.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much.